Hello everybody, Mango Thunderslice here. I just listened to Emma Watson's speech before the UN about the gender equality movement, he for she, and it kind of sparked something that's been on my mind for a little while now about the patriarchy and about men and women and their relations in the world that we live in. And I'd like to say the following. The patriarchy does not benefit men. And I know in a simple reading of the word patriarchy that might sound a little weird because patri means father in Latin and archy means rule, so people interpret patriarchy as men rule. But to look at it like that is not really grasping the real issue at hand. Think about it this way. In the individual family structure, what is a patriarchy? It is when the father is the absolute authority in the family unit, and what the father says cannot be appealed, it cannot be overruled. What the father says, you gotta do. You do what your father tells you. I mean, the atomic American family goes by this principle. An average military family is a perfect example. You do what your father tells you. And just like your father's doing what his father tells him, because it's a father figure that we're talking about, not necessarily men rule, but a centralized system of authority. And that's what the patriarchy really represents. After all, if we're talking about addressing the problem of patriarchy, are we suggesting a matriarchy? Are we suggesting that in the individual family unit that the mother should be the dominator, it should be the only one who has authority, whose word is God's word and no one can appeal, the mother's authority? That's not really a solution. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the mother, the son, the daughter, all having individual worth and value and personhood in the family unit and having authority of their own. And rather than the father, the central authority figure, being the one who dictates the rules for everyone else, the family comes together and reaches a verdict on what to do and how to live their lives. So we see a system of authority, centralized directive authority in the world around us, and that's really what the consequence of patriarchy is. Because if the father figure is the sole person with authority, then the secondary, people of power, the mother, the son, the daughter, they're all commodified. They're turned into property. They're turned into these, consequences of the existence of the man. And of course, there's really subtle economic issues involved with this. Impoverished issues in Africa. Genital mutilation. I mean. These are things that are deep cultural roots, and we need to address those as individual problems. But if we're talking about the problem of patriarchy, we need to be conscious of what Emma Watson said at the beginning of her speech, which is, this isn't a men versus women thing. And if you're looking at it that way, then you're losing out, and nothing's gonna come of any action that's founded on, this is women versus men. Women are fighting men for their rights, because that's not what we're talking about. And women and men need to work together. The masculine and the feminine need to be in balance and in harmony. And in the individual family, the mother needs to be respected as much as the father, and so do the kids. I mean, after all, women get objectified, they get materialized, and they get looked at as objects because, of the dominator culture within men's psychology today. So, but think about it, for the boy, for a little boy, I mean, the natural human attitude is to cooperate and to work in harmony with people, and there are people who will disagree with me on that, but I believe that people are naturally at birth good, and they want to help other people, and they're not dominating, and they're not malicious, and they don't want to take away from others. They want to work together, and they want to create something bigger and better. So essentially what I'm saying is that we're talking about patriarchy, and we're talking about this general aspect of men and women and their relations in our society. We need to keep in mind that we're all working together towards something. We're working to create a balance, not a new imbalance with a matriarch instead of a patriarch. We want to have distributed power relations. We want the son and the daughter not to be property, but to be human beings, to be creatures who are endowed with their own consciousness and have their own voice and need to be listened to as much as the mother does. And the father does too, but when we're talking about a structure, this is the main difference. Centralized directive authority, which is represented by a central state, a central power dictating rules for everyone else that is beyond reproach, and a communal system where everyone makes decisions together, and therefore we don't have conflict. Instead of just raw competition, which I'm not against competition in all its forms, but instead we have decision making in a truly democratic way, where families make decisions together, and in a society we make a decision together as communities and as regions and, you know, as people. And so we need to keep in mind that it's not just men rule, but that we're all family on this planet, and we should treat each other that way. I'm not going to kill my brother, I'm not going to kill my sister, I'm not going to kill anybody in my family because they're my family. And I hope you see it that way too. Thanks.